Good morning. My name is Kathy Tinsley. I'm the chair of the Macon County Board of Elections, and I welcome you here this morning. Our board consists of Mr. John Van Hook, Mr. Gary Dills, who is our vice chair, Mr. Jeff Gillette, and we welcome Mr. Kurt Stevens from Jackson County, as we have a multi-county jurisdictional situation, and so he's taken the place of one of our board members this morning, and we're thankful that you could come over. We are deeply appreciative of anyone who takes part in the political process, who follows the political process, and we strive for transparency at every turn, to make our meetings public, to make these hearings and things when we seem like we may not know what we're doing, but we do, and hopefully it's going to go well this morning. Sometimes in the process there arise challenges, protests, and things that need to be dealt with as a board and with the public's participation, and that's why we're here today. I wanted to read just a bit in background as to, these are suggested things of procedures from our State Board of Elections, and then we'll get started. A person who files a notice of candidacy for any elected office may have his or her qualifications challenged by a formal complaint called a candidate challenge. State law allows any qualified voter in the same district as the office sought by the candidate to challenge the candidate's eligibility for elected office based on the grounds that the candidate does not meet the constitutional or statutory qualifications for office, including residency. A candidate challenge begins when a voter registered in the same district as the office sought by the candidate files an affidavit with the County Board of Elections that received notice of the candidacy. The form is available on the State Board's website and must be notarized. A challenge to a candidate can only be filed between the date the candidate files his or her notice of candidacy or petition and 10 business days after the close of the filing period for notice of candidacy or petition. So that's a little bit of background. I apologize for just reading it, but I think it puts us all on the same level of information. All of that being said, I'm going to, because we are fortunate enough to have two attorneys on our board, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Jeff Gillette and allow him to guide us through the rest of the meeting and listen to witnesses and listen to information, because we want to make sure we do everything step by step and in the right way. So Jeff, if you would go ahead with.
Sure. Dan, thank you, Ms. Chair, Madam Chair. I'd like to take a few minutes to explain what's going on and how we're going to proceed. This is something that we don't do every year, and it may be something that those of you here in the audience or watching online may not see all the time. So we're going to take a few minutes and just explain the procedures to you. We do have a candidate, Mr. Overton Tucker Chambers. Is Mr. Chambers here in the room? I see Mr. Chambers here, and he filed to become a candidate for the Highlands Town Board of Commissioners about 21 July 2023, and we'll get into a little bit more of that in a few minutes. His residency has been challenged by Mr. James Derrick Taylor. Mr. Taylor is not present in this room. He is participating by Zoom, and those of you who are in this room can see Mr. Taylor on the video screen on the right side. Mr. Taylor is represented by counsel. Mr. Ward Collins, whom you will hear from in a few minutes, is sitting here in this audience. And I will explain that because of the busy court schedule in our courthouse today, we were unable to obtain the services of one of the court reporters that we usually use. And we've been very fortunate to secure the services of court reporter, I'll ask her to introduce herself. Could you state your name, please? Could the court reporter please state your name?
Yes, my name is Cheryl Maddox.
And we appreciate you being here. She is also remotely transcribing this hearing, and we appreciate her participation. I have, as an attorney, as a retired attorney, I had the privilege of working for many years in residential real estate closings, and to be a member of the Highlands Chamber of Commerce. And that experience gave me the privilege of seeing the wonderful spirit of community service, of cooperation, of volunteerism that has made Highlands a very successful and beloved city in our county. And I have occasion to meet in passing both Mr. Taylor and Mr. Chambers, and I have reason to understand that both of them are examples of the highest standards of community service, or as we Rotarians say, service above self, for both their own experience and for those around them and for some generations. We appreciate everything that you have done for Highlands, and because Highlands is such an important part of Macon County, your good works have benefited all of us, from Highlands to Franklin to Otto to Nantahala and beyond. We certainly appreciate all that you've done. Having said that, that's not why we're here. And so we are here because the elections are required and mandated in the statutes. We have to observe the rules and we have to follow the rules. And among the rules that we have to follow, I'm going to cite to chapter 163 of our North Carolina statute book. I'm going to call that the Elections Code, just because it's easier to say Elections Code than it is chapter 163 of the North Carolina General Statutes. The Election Code in section 294.2 says that only persons who are registered to vote in a municipality shall be permitted to file notice of candidacy for elections. I'm sorry? Only persons who are registered to vote in the municipality shall be permitted to file notice of candidacy for election to municipal office. So we have a residency requirement. Now, our board maintains records for voter registrations. Those are public documents. And on the 21st of July, 2023, Mr. Chambers filed a change of address form. And as of that date, he listed his new address as 401 North 5th Street in Highlands. We accepted that change request as required by the Election Code section 82.6. On the same day, Mr. Chambers filed with the Board of Elections his notice of candidacy for the town of Highlands Board of Commissioners. So that residency, so he filed in his change of address that he was in fact living and residing within the boundaries of the town of Highlands. The next section I'm going to read is the Election Code 127.2. A challenge to a candidate may be filed with the Board of Elections no later than 10 business days after the close of the filing period. And so we received, the Board of Elections received a verified affidavit from Mr. Taylor. It was dated August 3rd, 2023, so it was within the 10-day window. And it alleged that Mr. Chambers was not a resident of the town of Highlands on the day that he filed as a candidate. We look at residency for those who are running for office as of the date of filing. And so the voter registration records, I believe that our chair just read a part of the statute that the challenger must reside within the municipality also. And our voter registration records show that Mr. Taylor is in fact a resident of the town of Highlands. The next statute I'll read is section 57, and this is how we determine residency. Residency, which is the basis of the challenge, shall be considered, the place shall be considered the residence of a person in which that person's habitation is fixed, and to which, whenever that person is absent, that person has the intention of returning. There are a few more specific details, and I'll read just a couple of them to you. Section C3, a person shall not be considered to have gained a residence in any municipality into which that person comes for temporary purposes only, and without the intention of making that municipality a permanent place of abode. That is one of the considerations or one of the factors that this panel will consider. C10, the establishment of a secondary residence by an elected official outside the district will not constitute prima facie evidence of a change of residence. That is, if you live inside the municipal boundaries and you have a second home, that does not count against you. C11, for the purpose of voting, a spouse shall be eligible to establish a separate domicile. Any spouse of Mr. Chambers may live at a place outside the town boundaries of the town of Highlands. That does not, in and of itself, establish that Mr. Chambers, the candidate, is not a resident of the town of Highlands. The rules in this statute are general principles that will guide our evaluation of the evidence that's presented at the hearing. I'll go on to section 127.5, and this talks about burden of proof. This is how we will make a determination in this challenge. The burden of proof shall be on the candidate, on Mr. Chambers, who must show by a preponderance of the evidence of the record as a whole that he is qualified to be a candidate for office. And if the challenge is based upon the question of residency, as this one is, the candidate must show all of the following three things. Number one, that he has actually abandoned his prior domicile, and that he has an intent not to return to his prior domicile. Number two, that he has acquired a new domicile by actual residence at the new place. And number three, that he has an intent of making his new domicile within the town of Highlands a permanent domicile. The candidate, Mr. Chambers, has the burden of proving each of these three items. The challenger, Mr. Taylor, does not have to produce evidence, although the board will gladly receive and consider any evidence presented by any of the parties, Mr. Chambers, Mr. Taylor, or even by the public regarding these three matters at issue. And so, as I say, members of the public may present evidence. We need to have anyone who wishes to speak to this board and present evidence sign up and be sworn. There is a notepad that's been going around, and if you feel like you may have something you want to tell us by way of evidence, you need to sign that pad of paper so that our chair can swear you in at the beginning of the actual proceeding. As is customary in litigation, the party with the burden of proof, that's Mr. Chambers, he will be allowed to go first, and he'll have an opportunity to rebut evidence subsequently after that may be offered against him. Section 127.4, the conduct of hearing at a challenge. The panel may allow evidence to be presented at the hearing in the form of affidavits and supporting documents. It may examine witnesses. Each witness shall be placed under oath before testifying. The panel may receive evidence at the hearing from any person with information concerning the subject of the challenge, and such presentation of evidence shall be subject to the North Carolina Rules of Evidence. The challenger will be permitted to present evidence at a hearing, but the challenger shall not be required to testify unless he has been subpoenaed. So this is a quasi-judicial proceeding. That means we're a little bit like a court, and we're a little bit not like a court. Like a court, we're going to have rules of evidence, and either Mr. Chambers or Mr. Taylor, through his counsel, may object to evidence that they feel should not be considered by this board, and we'll stop and we'll consider that challenge if it comes, that objection if it comes up, and rule on it. Like a court, we'll have evidence that's presented by way of exhibits and by testimony, and in each of those cases, both Mr. Taylor, through his counsel, and Mr. Chambers have the right to ask questions if it's a witness, or to make challenges if it's an exhibit. Unlike a court, members of this panel may also ask questions. And unlike a court, we have public records as a board of elections that are relevant, and we've provided some of those in advance to both Mr. Chambers and to Mr. Collins and Mr. Taylor. And as a preliminary matter, we'll deal with some of those. One of the issues that faces both courts and this hearing is the remote participation of one of the parties. Mr. Taylor is participating, or asks to participate via Zoom, and the statutes require us to consider whether he can be seen and heard, whether he can ask questions, whether people can ask him questions, he can respond. We had a short conversation ahead of time, and we can discuss that more with him. But Mr. Chambers has the right to make an objection to having Mr. Taylor participate remotely. I understand in advance of this hearing that Mr. Chambers does make that objection, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. That will be a preliminary matter. The panel will make a written decision on each challenge, on this challenge, by separately stating findings of fact and conclusions of law, and will follow up with a written order a few days after this hearing. And I believe I've gone through all of the statutes. So in light of these statutes, the board is going to proceed in the following manner. We have a couple of preliminary things to attend to. First, the question whether Mr. Taylor should participate remotely. Second, with the exhibits that we have provided in advance to Mr. Taylor and his counsel and Mr. Chambers, we need to ask if there are any objections to those or additions. And then we will begin hearing statements from the parties, give each party an opportunity to present evidence. And then when all the evidence has been presented, each of the parties will have a few minutes to give a summary statement or a closing argument, I guess, in judicial terms. And then we, as panel, will deliberate. We will do it in front of you because that's what the law requires. And then our chair will announce a decision on this matter. So the first preliminary matter, I guess, is going to be the question of whether Mr. Taylor is allowed to participate and present evidence remotely. The statute in question is North Carolina General Statute 7A 49.6. It's captioned proceedings conducted by audio and video transmission. The presumption in this statute is that a court or quasi-judicial board may allow participation remotely. However, if one party objects, we will hear that objection, and the standard is that the objecting party must show good cause why remote participant should not be allowed to participate remotely. And then we will have to rule as a board whether the good cause has been shown to exclude the remote participant. So I will ask Mr. Chambers, do you still object to having Mr. Taylor participate remotely?
No.
You do not object?
No.
Okay. Then we, as a board, ask for a vote of the board to allow Mr. Taylor to participate in this hearing remotely?
So moved.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Okay. Mr.
Can I
Taylor?
make a point of it?
Please.
The court reporter, thank you for what you're doing, but since we're not visible to her, could she turn off her camera? And if she turns her camera off, then we won't see her. We don't need to see her, she doesn't need to see us. Could we just ask her to turn her video off on her Zoom call?
Can you make sure she's heard that?
Cheryl, can you turn off your monitor, your computer?
Video part.
Your video part of your,
Yeah,
this
just,
morning, so
just
we
turn
can't.
off your video.
Yeah, turn off your video.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I
you.
feel like I can see Mr. Taylor better.
That's a good point. Thank you, Kurt.
Can I ask who just made that statement?
Kirk Stevens,
Okay,
and thank you.
gotcha, thank you.
Okay, the second,
You're welcome.
the second preliminary matter, yesterday, our director, Melanie Thibault, produced a number of documents, exhibits that have been provided both to Mr. Chambers and to Mr. Taylor and Mr. Collins. They consist of Exhibit A, which are the public records of voter registration for Mr. Chambers. Exhibit B, which is Mr. Chambers' notice of candidacy that was filed. Exhibit C, which is the candidate challenge form that Mr. Taylor has filed. And Exhibit D is voter registration information for Mr. Taylor that establishes his residency within the town of Highlands. Mr. Collins and Mr. Chambers, do you have any objections to the admission of these exhibits?
No objection.
Mr. Chambers? Okay, then these are admitted and they have become a part of the record. That completes the preliminary matters. So as we get into the hearing itself, I'd like to give Mr. Chambers 5 minutes to present an opening statement, followed by Mr. Taylor for the same time.
You need to swear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we need to swear everyone who's going to be a witness.
Anyone that's going to speak this morning, if you just step over to the side with me and I'll swear you in
And I guess you'll need to swear Mr. Taylor.
remotely.
Yeah.
Mr. Taylor, you're right there, so you can. Good morning. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the board shall be
You
the
don't need to
truth, the
swear.
whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Separately. Mr. Taylor, can you see me or hear me?
He can't see you.
You have to talk over
I
here.
can hear you.
Okay, let me come
I
back.
can hear you.
Let me come back over there. Here we are. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give to the board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay. And that's why there are several of us. We catch each other's errors and omissions. So, Mr. Chambers, you may make an opening statement of up to 5 minutes. Please, and please, for the benefit of the online streaming, when you speak, if you'd step to the podium.
All right. I want to thank you all for letting
I'm
me
sorry,
say
sir.
this.
Can we check to see if your mic is working?
Is it working?
I don't think
Yeah.
it is.
Okay. We thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to speak today. I'm not saying I'm
Can't
happy.
hear him.
See, yeah,
Hang on a
I knew that was gonna be a problem. Let her see if that mic is on.
Can you hear me?
Is there a little red button?
We're gonna stop the clock and wait.
Can you hear me?
Not yet, they gotta turn that on.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, but the people who are
Record, the
participating
court
remotely
reporter.
The court
can't hear
reporter
you.
cannot, so
Yeah.
she needs to be able to hear you.
Shouldn't take but a second.
So, let's see.
And this
Okay.
is Mr. Chambers speaking, right?
Yes.
It is, can you hear him at all? Say something, Mr. Chairman.
I
Okay,
can barely hear him, but not well enough to.
Okay.
how do I, want to speak louder?
Tell you what, is there room, no, can they turn it on, or we'll just move the mic so we can maybe get him?
Give Melanie just.
Try it now.
Tap that mic, sir. Tap it. Okay, it's on.
Sounds like it's on. Now try it, close to
A
it.
little closer to
Can
it.
you hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear
I
me?
can.
Okay.
Pull it a little closer to you, sir.
Is that out? Is that okay?
Ms. Maddox, can you hear him?
Can you hear me?
No.
No.
Not really.
See if there's a power button.
I can try.
Well, he hit them.
We can hear it, it's amplifying.
No, but the court reporter could not.
It's not online.
So we use this mic here, huh?
Do you want us-
No, it's she's on the phone. She's not on the microphone.
It's not wired into the Zoom. When that mic is
The
on.
court reporter's on the
Yes,
phone.
so he needs to
Do you want me to
speak-
scoot further?
Yeah, if
Just
you
turn
could
that
just
around
speak
so
a
the
little
speaker faces
closer
him.
to the phone speaker.
So you're getting the speaker to catch the sound better. All right. Let's see if that works.
I'll leave this here. so-
Okay, that's good.
There you go. That'll be better.
Yeah, that's these Zoom things.
Can you hear me now?
Cheryl, can you hear
Can
him
you-
now?
How about
Not
now?
really, but I'll work on it.
You wanna try and speak towards the phone speaker.
The speaker? Your speaker's right there.
That's what I was
Well,
asking.
why not just use this mic? Would that not work?
Sir, can you come around here and speak into this, and let's test to see if she can hear you from that, just for whatever crazy reason.
Can you hear me now?
Ms. Maddox, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
She can do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll start the clock.
Okay. I want to thank you all for being here, and want to say I'm not happy to be here, but I'd like to thank you for allowing me to be here. Why? Because I believe in good government, just like you do believe in good government and allow me to make my voice. I consider Highlands my home at 401 North Fifth Street in Highlands. It's such a home as any other place that I could be. It's my mother's grew up there. My grandfather built it in 1931, and I consider that my home. My address and my driver's license prove that that is my home. I'm not going to sit here and prejudge myself, prejury myself, where I might or might not sleep within 30, 60, or 90 days, or even a year. For the matter, maybe more important than I haven't slept. There's been many nights I haven't slept about worrying about the Highlands and its property rights. That's the main reason I'm running for councilman, is the property rights. A little book that I have is a brief history of Macon County. It was written in 1891 by Reverend C.D. Smith, wrote about Macon County. The first form about how neighbors help neighbors. He was said that the people stopped helping others. They began selfish and freeze out the customary habits they brought with them. They began turning toward each other against. He was talking about how the community of Macon County was changed in just a few years he was in there. I wonder what Reverend Smith would have thought today. I want to say some things about the statement that was issued by Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor's statement was not a true statement. Firstly, I changed my address to the voter registration back in 401 North 5th Street. You can check the records by my voting address, by the First Street address, and second, by the fact that I don't own the property on 5th Street. But not everyone who lives at their town Highlands owns property they live in. The property belongs to my mother, Isabel Chambers. Thursday, my driver's license and other documents is listed at 401 North 5th Street. I love where I live and want to see it preserved the way my family has helped assert it for generations. I'm a good Highlander for good government, My integrity is more important than where I lay my head. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Taylor, Mr. Collins, whichever one of you, and again, come up and speak loudly for the recorder.
Madam Court Reporter, can you hear me?
Cheryl, can you?
Yes, sir. That's Mr. Gillette
Yes, that would be me. I was one.
speaking.
Ward Collins is speaking.
Yeah, I can hear you.
W-A-R-D.
Okay, what's his first name?
W-A-R-D. Last name
Okay, thank you.
C-O-L-I-N-S. Appearing for Derek Taylor.
Okay, and I can hear you fine, thank you.
Not going to use all 5 minutes. This challenge is pretty straightforward. It's with respect to the residency, the actual residency of Mr. Chambers. We're going to make no challenge to his desire or his intentions for the town of Highlands. We mean to tread on the sort of questions that pertain to residency and domicile. To be sure, these are great matters, great questions that could go either way. To be sure, this board will have the discretion to rule either way, and I trust the board will accept all testimony under the scrutiny and burdens the statutes provide. There's a good reason that it becomes an uphill battle in these sort of contexts, given all the possibilities of imbalances in representation and all sorts of hijinks that could follow these questions of residency and candidacy. So we just asked, Mr. Taylor asked that the court receive the evidence and under the burden and scrutiny the law requires. And at the end, ask yourself, does this look like a case where somebody's just trying to get around a requirement? Does this look like a case? Does this look like evidence of permanent intent to abandon? Does this look like evidence of intent to forever remove themselves from a place they've lived at for over 30 years, over 20 years? And I'll submit that at the end, this will look like a case like that. One will never, ever be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt one way or the other. But given the scrutiny and the burdens the state law requires, I think at the end, this will show itself to be a case that doesn't pass muster. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mr. Chambers, you now have an opportunity to present evidence to this board. You may do it by your own testimony, you may pass up exhibits, you may call other witnesses if you have them. The time is, in each point, Mr. Collins will have an opportunity of asking questions, and the board also.
401 North Fifth Street address.
Now, just again, making a record here, the candidate has given to Mr. Stevens a driver's license. And before I look at this, let me just ask you to explain what you want us to see as we look at your driver's license.
I just want you to see my date for my address, 401 North Fifth Street. That's what's on there.
Okay.
I also have,
Mr. Collins, would you check that? And is there any objection to us receiving that as an exhibit and considering it?
Maybe just some quick voir dire on that. Sir, how long have you had that driver's license? Yes.
whatever date that was issued.
It shows date of issuance, if I'm reading this correctly, March 22nd of 2022.
Okay, and has that been in your possession since then?
Yes.
Okay. And you've had no other driver's licenses prior or at the same time with this showing anything different?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
And so that exhibit is received without objection.
Mr. Collins, there was no objection to that?
No objection.
Okay. And Mr. Gillette, if we could, it could be prudent if we may make a copy of that to put into the record. There's no objection.
If the director would, or her designee would do that after we have a chance to look at it.
I've had a North Carolina driver's license for 50 years, so.
I apologize for interrupting, but who asked for the copy of it to be made?
John Van Hook.
I think you should redact his actual driver's license number.
And we will receive that as the candidate's exhibit number 1.
That's all the physical evidence I have right now. I do have other, my mailing address is 401 North Fifth Street. All my documents and letters come to 401 North Fifth Street. And I said in my statement, 30, 60, 90 days, years, I've always lived at that address. I consider it my home. It was my mother's home. It was my grandfather's home. And several generations of the property have been in my folks' name.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I'll just say that that is my mother's home, Isabel Chambers. That is my home. I grew up in and out of that home. I lived there for 30, 90, 60, or even years. My generations go back 7 generations in Highlands, and I think that is proof enough that I have maintained that property. I've rented that property. I don't know what other physical evidence you need.
And Mr. Collins, feel free to reposition yourself in the room as necessary so that you can hear what's being said.
What do you want to say?
You're fine.
Oh. Mr. Chambers, is there any other statements or anything else you would wish to set forth at this time?
The reason I decided to run for councilman is because my business is affected by what the property rights of Highlands. I represent a lot of clients that have properties in Highlands but don't have a voice in their decision as far as the city is concerned. And I just feel that somebody's got to stand up for these people because the property rights of these people are being taken over by the city council and the government, and I'm just not, I just don't need to be silent on that. It affects me as well as the other property owners in the Highlands. And I don't like seeing government overrun the people and property of Highlands. There's just too many restrictions. I think it's discriminatory. I think the word would be, it's putting property owners against property owners, and I just don't think it's fair. And the city just has, the government has just too much control over what people can do in their house and out of their house. Other citizens may not agree.
Sir, I don't mean to cut you off, but
Go ahead.
can we reposition mainly talking about the domicile here? Because that's really what we're.
Domicile, I'm not
Yeah.
about to sell my home just because I want to move into town. I have 2 places, one outside the city and this house inside the city.
Okay.
I pay the taxes. You know, there's people who live outside the town, that have property inside the town. But I have done a lot for the city, and as far as taxes, just everything. I can't explain more of it than what I've done for the city.
Do you intend to make the Fifth Street address your permanent address?
Let's give Mr. Collins probably a
Okay.
chance. If he's done with his initial statements, give Mr. Collins a chance here to cross, and then we can come in after.
All right.
So to be clear, this is the opportunity for cross-examination in full?
I think, sir, are you complete
fine.
making your statements? Okay, so I guess he would be your witness, Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins, go ahead and cross-examine. We may have some other questions.
Yes.
After we've
Sure.
asked questions, you'll have an opportunity to cross-examine.
Yeah, rebuttal. Yeah.
I want to go over some of your testimony. You called it your house, Head and Lanes.
It's in mine and my wife's name.
You called it your house.
Mr. Collins,
It is
you
a house I
asking,
own.
you just said Head and Lane. Are you asking about Head and Lane property or about Fifth Street property?
Head and Lane's your home.
I have a piece of property on Head and Lane.
That's where you said your home was.
I have a piece of property at Head and Lane.
And it is outside the town limits.
Yes,
And you've lived there for how long?
I've lived there back and forth since '92.
Back-
Well, really generations
Back and forth from where?
from my property I own.
From what?
From the property I own outside the town, back and forth.
Okay.
I go both from Head and Lane into the property in Highlands. I feel that somebody pays taxes in town, they should be allowed to vote in town.
So you go back and forth.
Yes,
What's the reason behind that?
they're both my homes.
Why go back and forth between in town, out of town?
Because that's where I work. I work and sleep. Elon Musk sleeps at his own business. I don't see any problem with me sleeping at my own business.
So you moved in, but you moved
Like I
back.
say, 30, 60, or 90 days.
What do you mean by 30, 60, or 90
There's
days?
a rule that you have to live in the property 30 days prior to considering it your home, or your
30, 60, 90?
30 days before this statement. That's what it says in the code books.
I cannot understand Mr. Chambers. He needs to speak louder and clearer, please.
Mr. Chambers, could
I
you take a
apologize.
step backwards so
Maybe
that,
have him talk right into the phone.
yeah.
Just talking on the phone there, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Reporter?
Sharon?
Yes, to speak clearly, please.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yes,
I'm going to refer here to exhibit A,
Okay.
going back to 2019. You completed a change of address form.
From what to what? What address? I don't have that document in front of me.
Just tell us which page you're on, please, Mr. Collins, if you will. Yeah.
Give
that
a
it?
copy of that to Mr. Chambers.
I'm showing you what's been identified by the board as Exhibit A. Do you recognize that document?
Yes,
What is that document?
it's a change in address, to 401 North Fifth Street.
From where to where?
To 401 North Fifth Street.
From Head Lane? Is that
I
correct?
don't think that matters.
If you don't mind.
Well,
I own
Ms.
property at 401, 539, but also live at 401 North Fifth Street.
So you're asking, through that form, you're asking the board to acknowledge a change of address to,
I live at 401 North Fifth Street.
I'm asking what you meant here by this form.
I wanted to make sure it was, the address was 401 North Fifth Street.
So you walked away there in your mind that you were living at 401 North Fifth Street.
Well, my license, my driver's license states it, and I received my mail there.
We'll get to that. And you did it again in 2020. Correct? Showing you again here in Exhibit A, You recognize that document? This would
This
be
is at a
the,
voting, this is at a voting rights, voting, when I went to vote. I was discussing 401, and they made me change it to 539 heading line. So I've been back and forth to this address.
Mr. Collins, just for the purpose, we got a remote, just announce what document or page number you're on
Well-
for identification for her, the court reporter.
sure, this is Exhibit A. That's what's been identified by the board as an Exhibit A. There are no subparts. It's not identified A1, A2, A3, or 4. But to be clear, this is the V 2017.04.
Perfect.
Authorization to vote for change of name of address for the year 2020. That's what you're looking at, correct? Mr. Chambers?
Yes. The documents here was when I had voting rights. I was voting, and a poll worker said, no, I don't live here. You live at this address. So she wouldn't let me vote for in town. She wanted me to vote outside of town.
Because you
And it was
didn't live
sort of
there?
Confusion. No, I was just trying, you know,
I'm just confused, because if you had lived there all along back from 2019, why'd
I've
you
been
have
back,
to fill
I've
the
been
form
back
out?
and forth to that house many times.
But if you had lived there on from 2019, why change again?
Well, I was at a voting right, trying to vote, and they wouldn't let me vote for the 401. They made me change it to 539 heading line.
So but you signed the form. I guess your
I didn't
signature.
I didn't sign this one.
You did, the signatures were back, sir.
As a matter of order, the signatures of voters are not public record, and so Madam Director has redacted signatures.
Who is speaking, please?
That was Jeff Gillette.
Okay, that's what I
I
thought,
don't
just
see
double
that
checking.
they've been redacted. I don't, you know, I've done what I was supposed to do. This is on election day. Well, that was in 2020 and 2019. So
So were
it
you
was
making a,
401, it was 401 North Fifth Street on both of these. And the lady, what I filled in up here, a lady signed my name as voter 091435.
I'm confused here. So are you saying somebody signed your name?
Up here at the top.
Up
But I don't
where?
have- These are voters' registration. They're both inside and outside of town. One was in 2019 and 2020. My license was changed in 2022.
I'm asking you, why did you change your address if you lived at 401 North Street the whole time, from 2019 on?
Well, it's very confusing when you go to vote, and the voters, poll worker says, no, you don't live there. So, you know, it's,
You signed that as an accurate representation of your request and your residency.
I say one was,
Speak up, sir.
like I said, I didn't have these documents with me, so I wasn't able to really go through them. I do have a driver's license that was made in 2022.
I got your driver's license.
Okay,
I'm
that was a
asking-
change of address back then. Then I re-registered on the day I registered to be a commissioner, back to the 401 North Fifth Street address.
You've got a history of going back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Now, let's talk about that license. You applied online and got that changed
Yes,
last year,
whenever the date is, yes. I'd lost my previous license.
so you had lost your license. That's why you went before the DMV to get your mailing address shown as 401
I don't
North
know.
4th Street?
I don't know.
You don't know.
No, I lost my license.
And what did the other one say?
I don't know.
You know that it could have said Head and Lane,
I don't know, I don't remember.
has before.
It could have.
Have you, are you under a separation agreement with your wife?
No. I'm not about to sell the property because of this. Like it says in my statement, integrity is worth
His
more
wife's,
than
his
what I
wife's
have.
domesticity is not relevant.
Now, if you want to
I
put,
didn't understand that.
Do we,
my
we got-
integrity
wait
is
a
worth
minute, I
more.
think we have an objection from the board.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Legally, his residency and his wife's residency are independent factors. It's not relevant where his wife lives, or his marital status is not relevant to his address.
Well, not asking about,
You just asked him if he was separated from his wife, and I'm saying that's irrelevant.
well, it will be relevant if, because the elements of separation is living apart from your wife with the intent to stay separated. So it would speak to his intentions.
Mr. Collins, I think we read in the statute that the wife of a candidate can establish a separate domicile, so her domicile would not necessarily, affect our determination one way or the other as to Mr. Chambers' domicile. If you were to prove the things that you might be alleging, it still, by statute, would not allow us to make the inference you want us to draw.
Well, there's very well, but as a matter of law, there's nothing that's going to be dispositive on the matter, but
Well, I think we can continue on and give it the level of veracity of the weight that it should or should not, and continue with the line of
Go ahead and
questioning.
ask another
Yeah.
question.
thanks for your objection.
Yeah.
All right, here, let's look at a few other things. This place, 401 4th Street, 401 5th Street,
yes.
that's where you work,
That is where I work and also stay.
and you've been living there, staying there, as you say, for how long?
Since my moving back to Highlands in since I was a kid.
Since you lived where since you were a kid?
I lived in Atlanta, but came back and forth to this. My mother inherited the property. I have a home there. I live back and forth between Highlands and outside of Highlands. I have a right to live at this address. I have to pay taxes at this address. If I want to run for a commissioner or whatever it is, dog catcher, I think that this should suffice. My driver's license, my mail, 401 North Fifth Street.
Mr. Chambers, if you will, just please limit your answers to his questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
And your property, do you have, how many vehicles do you have?
One,
Do you have any boats or anything like that?
no,
Do you have utilities put in your name for this 401 North Fifth Street?
I pay the utilities for my mother.
Let's talk about that. She owns it.
Yes.
Do you have a lease?
I have a rental agreement, yes.
I'm sorry, though, I don't interrupt you. If you answer you asked the question, if the utilities are in your name,
No,
are they or aren't they?
no.
Okay, thank you.
To be very clear, the utilities are in the name of,
Isabel Chambers. My mother.
is there anything that you can show us that is in your name with respect to the Fifth Street address, other than your license?
My mailing. My
And-
mail that comes to me.
You have mail
Yes.
that comes to,
401 North Fifth Street.
you have mail that comes to Head and Lane,
No,
you have mail that comes to your wife in Head and Lane.
no.
So no mail comes to Head and Lane?
No,
Is there a mail receptacle at Head and Lane?
no,
So you've always gotten your mail at 401 North Fifth Street?
yes.
Although you don't have a utility in your name for 401 North Fifth Street?
No. Property I'm going to inherit.
I'm sorry, just for clarification there, Mr. Collins, you asked him if the mail came to where? 401 or 539?
I asked both.
Okay. I don't know if I was clear. Where does the mail come
Comes to
to?
401 North Fifth Street.
So you get no mail at 539?
Right.
Okay, so I just want to, thank you.
Have you applied for any tax treatment having a home and business at the same place?
What do you mean, tax treatment?
Well, if you work, in certain circumstances, if you work where you live, you can get special tax treatment. Have you applied for anything such as that?
No.
Can you help me explain the history here of going back and forth? I know you've never really quite answered it. Somebody's going to say, somebody was to say, you're just going back in and out with the election cycle. What say you?
No. I would be voting at 401 North Fifth Street. My wife is voting at 539 Head and Lane.
I'm still trying to get, you have admitted that you've tried to go back and
I've
forth.
gone, let's say my home, I've got a country home. My wife lives in it, and I have a town home.
But Head Lane has been your residence for most of the past 20 years, fair to say?
No.
Okay, so tell me what's true.
I don't know if I understood your question.
Well,
Mr.
I'm
Collins.
asking you where you have lived the past 20 years.
I have lived at both places, 539 Head Lane and 401 North Fifth Street.
So you've gone back and forth,
Yes.
and you've gone back and forth with the rhythm of the election cycles.
No,
That's not true.
no,
Is it not true that you've made at least 2, 3 election day changes to your residency under the form
No,
shown in
no.
Exhibit A?
no.
That's not true.
I've always voted outside the district. I haven't voted inside Highlands.
Will you admit that you have made multiple election day changes with respect to
No,
your residency?
No,
So are you objecting to the authenticity of Exhibit A shown before you today in this hearing? I'm just trying to get the story.
The address at 535 Head Lane, I don't believe that is correct. I think it's 539.
So what are you referring to?
This address right here.
Shown where?
This is on document 2020.
It's on the 2020.
So are these accurate? Are these accurate?
This one's not,
Because it should be 539?
yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. But I want to be real clear. Are you saying you haven't made multiple changes of your residency on the election day?
How many multiple?
More than one?
I guess I have.
With the election cycle?
Not necessarily.
Election day change?
No.
That's what it says, right?
You said a change of election. Well, I guess so. Somebody at the voters registration questioned me and then changed it. I don't know, because I said one date and they said another.
So let me get this straight. Let me get to it right here. You bring to the board your license as the sole piece of evidence of your residency, and that's of your mailing address.
Yes. I also have here a gun permit. It was dated 401 North Fifth Street. So,
Before you show that to us, would you show that to Mr. Collins, please? And Mr. Collins, do you have any objection to that being admitted?
No objection to this. I want to be, I don't know if it's going to be marked.
It's going to be candidates number 2.
Now, let's go over some ground here. There's no mail receptacle at 539,
that's right.
no P.O. box.
There's a P.O. box that now address it for 1239.
Can we finish processing that piece of, that exhibit before you go on for further questions?
I'll be, no,
Well, I'm sorry, first of all, what is it? I think
this
I-
is a North Carolina concealed handgun permit showing, bearing his name, bearing the address of 401 North Fifth Street, Highland, North Carolina. Here's a question for you, it's not clear.
Wait a minute. All right, is that about the admissibility of the?
There's no objection to the admissibility of this as
Can we receive
Yeah.
that and pass it around?
Now, I would think for the record, we need to put in as a matter of law, these are tied to driver's license. This is how they're tracked. It has a driver's license number on it. Correct.
Is there a difference?
No ideas in speaking, people.
That was John Van Hook.
I'm sorry, you're all talking at one time, and I don't know who is who.
Okay, apologies.
Jeff Gillette and John Van Hook were discussing back and forth.
There's the deal. Okay, but it is
Okay, thank you.
issued.
It's an exhibit. We'll,
It's an
as a panel, we'll just, deliberate on it. Yes, give that to John.
Are you still there?
Has all the panel had a chance to look at the exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Collins, please continue your questions.
Hey. Do you ever intend to strike that? Is it your testimony here today that you never intend to go back to Head and Lane?
I don't think that's relevant.
Okay, I'll leave it at
Well,
that.
well, hold on, now, sir, I think you need to answer his question that he's posed here.
I'm gonna go back there, yes, but
That's
not,
all I have.
Well,
That's all I have. That's all the questions I have.
Does the board have any questions?
at this
Please
time,
identify yourself for the,
certainly, this is John Van Hook, board member. So Mr. Chambers, sorry. Okay. Just a few questions here, kind of from the testimony here that I'd like to just maybe nail down for my benefit and maybe the rest of the board as well. You said the bills were in your mother's name, is
That's
that
right.
correct?
Yes.
And that's Isabella, is that
Isabel,
Isabel? Does she live there at that property?
no.
Where does she live?
She lives at 537 Hidden Lane.
Okay, it's 537 next to 539? Okay. All right. But your mother owned that property, or she still
Yes.
owns it?
Yes,
Did she ever live there at some point?
yes.
Okay. And just for my edification, how long ago did
She
she
was
live
born and
there?
raised there.
How long ago did she leave there? roughly?
She roughly left in, let's say 53, but came back and lived there in, there was a conflict as far as the rezoning of the property from R1 to B2, B7. But it was stated that she had to live there 30 days, and she lived there 30 days. She lived there off and on during her whole life. She property is in her name.
Okay.
She's gonna be passing it down to me and my brother.
Well, let me clarify my question. I may not have done a good job asking it.
Okay,
How far back, how many years, months, if you will, ago, did she live there as her primary residence?
I can't say.
Has it been more than 3 years, more than 5?
Yes, yes.
Okay, all right, that's fine, sir. So it's fair to say it's been a residual, all the bills and everything were in her
Yes.
names and it just kept that way?
Yes. The home
Okay.
is considered a home occupation because my grandfather had a plumbing and electrical business out of there.
Okay, all right. And the change of registration forms there, do you recall signing those? Do you have any recollection of that? Because one of them appears, it looks like, is signed by you. I can't really make
They're
the other
both
one
signed
out.
by me. I think they're
Okay,
both-
all right, I just wanted to clarify that. Now, the driver's license that you produced, did you just simply order a duplicate, or did you make any changes to it
I
when
just
you
ordered a
reordered?
duplicate.
You ordered a duplicate. So if that was the case, it's fair to say it was the same address on there prior.
Yes.
Okay. And if I could, sir, it does appear here that what Mr. Collins has brought out is that you are somewhat back and forth between these residences. I guess my question to you is, you filed to run as a candidate here.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, folks, this was on 21 July 20, this year. At that day, were you living at, well, I'm going to ask you, which address were you sleeping and domiciling at? Was it 401 North or was it 539 Hidden?
What did I put that on my statement? I believe it said 401. I mean, yeah, 401.
Okay. And I'm going to ask this just kind of directly to you. Do you plan to go back to the Head Lane residence as of that date and as of now to make it your permanent domicile?
I'm going back and forth between the two properties. The only reason I got into this race was because, like I say, the property owners,
No, and I appreciate all that, sir. I do. But I just, as of
No.
right now, that date and
I'm
now,
sleeping,
is your intent to stay at the 401 North Fifth Street property permanent? Is that your intent at this time? That's my question.
I stand to say at 539 Head Lane.
So it's your intent to go back to 539 Head Lane as of this, at this time? Just for clarification on this.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, we've understood how you've acquired the new domicile. It's family property.
Right.
And I understand your mother intends to will it to you and your sibling. Okay, that all makes, I understand that. I think with what you've said there, sir, I think, I'll say my other questions may be not relevant at this point. I think that's all I have at this time.
I have just one question. It's based on your comment you made kind of offhand. Curiosity question.
Where's the,
State your name.
This is Gary Dills talking. What's the zoning, distinction or designation for the Fifth Street property? Is it R or B?
It's B.
It's B. Okay. Thank you.
Kathy,
Next.
Jeff, any questions?
Kathy, do you have anything?
I just want to clear up things in my head, so, and I'm going by this procedural guide from the state. Have you abandoned the first domicile? Have you abandoned
No.
the Head Lane property? And you don't plan to make the new, the
Street.
property at Fifth Street a permanent domicile? You'd like to continue living back and forth?
I don't know, I'm inheriting it from my mother, so I don't know what I'm gonna do with it.
And just on a kind of everyday kind of question from a person that's not an attorney, about 365 days in a year, Mr. Chambers, where would you estimate you stay as you go back and forth? Where do you think you sleep the most?
539 Headline.
Let me follow up on my stupid question from, this is Dills again. So if this property at Fifth Street is designated zoned business,
Yes.
how could it be a residence?
Home occupation. I mean, there was a business there and a home.
You really need to read the zoning. It gets
Okay.
deep in what
Okay.
you can and can't do.
Just asking.
Yeah.
Well, following up, this is Gillette, following up on that question, do you know, and the answer might be you don't know, but do you know if the residence is an acceptable use for that particular zoning?
Yes.
You do know that it is, or you?
I assume, since it's a both home occupation, that you can live and work from the house. But it was reclassified years ago from R1 to B2 with the city. And they complained, it was mainly, there's a lot of political infighting as far as the politics in Highlands, and we just happened to be one of the properties in the way.
Sure. Have you talked to anybody in the town's staff so they know that
Yes, they
that you're
know.
residing there?
No.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's all my questions.
I have no questions. Thank you, sir.
Nothing
Any
further.
rebuttal? Yeah, Mr. Collins?
Nothing further from the challenger.
Mr. Chambers, do you want to clarify yourself on any of the questions or any statement that's been made so far?
I'd just like to say that the reason I signed up for this, there's the property rights, I'm in real estate, vacation rentals, and things like that, and the people that I represent, my clients, don't have a right to say anything, and therefore I think I have to protect their property. And so the only way at this point was protecting their properties was to run for town board. There's been a lawsuit continuing that will restrict the rights of others to do what they want to with their property. They don't have a say, and it's gone through the courts. The reason I signed up also was the representative, the attorney that was representing the STRs quit and went with the city. And I don't know if that's ethical or not, but that is just, politics, and I just figured I'd have to get in there. If you can't beat them, join them. So that's what I did.
When you say STR, what do you mean by
It's the
that?
short-term rentals, and the city's saying whether they can or cannot rent, discriminating against different properties, taking away people's property rights, and it's gotten too far and out of hand. So I just, at this point, there was only one way to do it, and that's run for council. A lot of the councilmen don't like it because I'm going against the grain. I have been in the real estate business and vacation rental business for over 30 years. My grandfather started the business 80 years ago, and I've just continued what he's done. I have to follow in the footsteps.
I
Thank
think
you.
we all appreciate the passion that brings someone to a candidacy and the reasons that they might run for office. And I hope that as we make our decisions, that you'll understand that we are following rules that have to do with
I
candidacy.
realize that.
And we just appreciate you, your passion about issues in your community. So that's a little separate from what we're doing here.
Mr. Chambers, thank you for your testimony. Do you have any other evidence or any other people that you want to present as evidence?
It's okay if I present my wife?
Sure.
Yeah,
She
surely.
can-
She can
Absolutely.
testify, absolutely.
Swear her in.
Okay. Let's see, where my little paper is here. I'll read it. You can do it right here.
And you may continue to stand, or you may sit down as you choose.
Let me find my,
Here you go.
what I'm supposed to say.
Well,
Yeah, thank you.
Get married.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you shall give to the board shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
State your name for the record, please.
Jeannie Chambers,
How do you spell that?
Jeannie.
You probably have to stand up here too.
Okay, sorry.
Just for the recorder.
And Ms. Chambers, you can either just give us your story, or if you like, Mr. Chambers can ask you questions, you can answer whichever you prefer.
I was back there going like this anyway. I just wanted a few things for semantics. His mother's address is 377 Heaven Lane, if that makes any difference at all. On my driver's license, it has 539 Heaven Lane. And I only remember one change at the day of election, and I don't remember, I'm chronologically challenged. I don't remember what year it was. I think it might have been voting for a big election. We have never, Tucker and I, neither one have ever voted for Town of Highlands specific elections. We've always voted, even though his address was 401 North Fifth Street, we only voted outside, the town. But we were, I guess, challenged, that's what you call it, at the voters registration that day, and they asked where we sleep at night, and we changed it to 539 then. So then Tucker changed it back the other day. Excuse me. When they said he changed his address 10 minutes before he declared candidacy, he wasn't changing it, he was changing it back. That's just really semantics, but I just wanted to clarify that. When he talks about home occupation is when we were moving our office, Chambers Agency Realtors, to the 401 North Fifth Street. I think it was either 1990 or 91. It was a residence at that time. We were surrounded by commercial and churches and condos and everything else, but his parents, Tony and Isabel Chambers, had to threaten to sue the Town of Highlands to get a right to have our office there. So until that could be done, and it was months, I don't remember how many months it was, but it was several months, his parents moved into the office to declare their residency there as a home occupation. Then the town decided it didn't have to go to court. They dropped the charges or whatever they do, and said they gave us a certificate of occupancy as a B4. We're not B2, we're B4. So we do have a commercial right to be there. It's a big house. Like I said, his mom was raised in that house. The lower level is all of our real estate office. We have apartments upstairs. And then we also have an attic space where Tucker can sleep. So it is what it is. And it's been there a long time.
Is there anything else you'd like us to know about Mr. Chambers' residence?
I think he said it all.
Okay, Mr. Collins may have some questions for you, so please direct your attention.
No questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board,
Thank you.
any questions from the board?
None for me.
She answered my,
Mr. Chambers, do you have any other evidence or people you'd like to present?
No.
Okay, Mr. Collins, I believe it's your turn.
No evidence. No evidence, no testimony.
And Mr. Chambers, technically you have the right of rebuttal, but he didn't present any evidence, so I assume you have no rebuttal statement. That would mean then that you have 10 minutes to give us your closing. If you have any closing statement to make.
I think I've said most of it.
Mr. Collins?
A few remarks. I want to, before I get into the merits of this case, I want to explain my basis for the question regarding his marital status. As council knows, you got the statute regarding, under 163-127, I believe it is, and you've got elements of separation. And with respect to intent, there's a large degree of overlap. So I don't think that the two can be mutually exclusive. That was the basis of the question. If the board wants to take a wide berth around that, that's fine, but it must be said on behalf of Mr. Taylor with the basis of that question. I have no qualms or issue with, strict marital status, but there are elements that overlap. Mr. Chambers, I want to thank you for your honesty. I watch and hear people lie for a living upstairs, and I admire you for that. And I don't think anybody here questions your passion for what's going on up at the town of Highlands. But I think on Mr. Chambers' own case in chief, he quite frankly makes it fairly easy for the board in this decision if we track the elements from the statute, how it's been interpreted in the courts. It reiterates that you must establish abandonment. And under no circumstances can we walk away from this record with that conclusion. The board went out of its way to let him explain himself out of it, but to his credit, he knew the truth, and he stepped right into it and he stood for it. So I think on that, if we just want to take that element alone, I think you can walk away with it, and I think everybody will have done their job, and the public will feel safer in their elections on the rules and procedures. I'd be glad to answer any questions, but I'd ask that you, I guess you'd say, deny the candidacy, approve the challenge on the residency question, and enter judgment in an order accordingly. That's all.
Mr. Chambers, last word if you wish.
I appreciate the
Come up a
honesty
little
of the,
bit closer.
appreciate the attorney. Thank you. I know it's against the law for the state to do what it's doing, but I think it needs to be reprimanded and rethought, and written. This not only includes, you want good government, I think you therefore better reach out a little bit further than the city limits of the municipality. Maybe a percentage of the population, Highlands Township, something like that. But to include just a few people that control so many, that's what I object to. You've got, I can't say, but the towns have their own system set, and they have their good friends and all this kind of thing. And I don't think that's fair to the rest of the public and affecting 95% of the people who have homes in Highlands. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers.
Sir, I'd just like to say real quick, I appreciate, as our chairwoman here said, your passion and wanting to serve and wanting to do that. And substantively, you probably may have a lot of merit. However, today we've got to base this on it's a procedural question based upon the elements in front of us. So,
We will deliberate in public because the statute tells us to do that. And I'm going to suggest, if the board wishes, to take just a couple of minutes, each one of us individually, to organize our thoughts so that when we make our deliberations, if you want to jot down a few things that are important to you. Take maybe 5 minutes.
I don't know, I'm ready.
Okay, well,
I'm okay, I'm ready.
Start with John.
okay, and again, I want to thank everyone today, going through the proceedings and everything they offered, and I think everyone was very candid and truthful, and I think it makes the process really work, and I think it has worked today. And that's why we have some law, so we can give some certainty to things. Mr. Chambers, there's three elements here that we're addressing. And the first one is an actual abandonment of the first domicile. I think you probably may have shown that. But it also says coupled with an intent not to return to the first domicile. I think with your testimony today, you stated that you do have that intent as of today. That element, as such, is not met to allow this going forward. Therefore, I could go through the other two, but we kind of stop right there. As such, I have to, my vote here would be against allowing your candidacy based on the elements prescribed by law.
Yeah, Gary Dills here. First of all, thank you for standing up and running for an office. It's hard to get good people to do that. And I really applaud your enthusiasm and your comments on how things are conducted in municipalities versus counties. Perhaps there's a legislative avenue to fix that, but that's for another day. As Mr. Van Hook said, I kind of a little bit disagree. I do think you abandoned, based on your comments, the first domicile, and you do not have an intent to return. And on the third qualification, the intent of making the new domicile a permanent domicile, obviously, if you're going to return to the other one, that's not true either. So, but you were upfront about it. We appreciate those comments and your honesty, as Mr. Collins said, and I vote to uphold the challenge as well.
As chair, I don't typically vote, so I'm gonna, but I will in the case of a tie. I'm gonna pass to Mr. Gillette, on my right.
Okay. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Chambers, for all of the things you do for Highlands. Highlands is a better place, and Macon County is a better place because of you and because of your ancestors, because of all the people around you. Appreciate that. But as Mr. Van Hook said, we are constrained by the rules that were given by the North Carolina General Assembly, and the rules do require us to make findings about whether you have abandoned 539 in favor of 401. I think you've been very straightforward with this, and we appreciate that. You go back and forth. And I think you said at one point in time that the majority of your nights are spent at 539. I'm sure that's a very nice home, and that's good for you, but that's not within the boundaries of the town of Highlands, and so I'm afraid I'm also going to have to sustain the challenge.
Kirk Stevens speaking, as the last person to speak up, I certainly echo, and I appreciate what you're doing and your candidacy. One thing I'd like to mention is not strictly part of the rules here, but I think with the issue of the driver's license, with all due respect to our colleagues at the DMV, I feel like that your address on your driver's license is less of a critical factor for being able to operate a motor vehicle, but your address on your voter record is of primary concern to where you vote. So at the elections, we work very hard to make sure that we're in the right precinct, that our physical address and our mailing address are distinct, and we do all of that. And so I feel like that just the driver's license doesn't necessarily support the actual physical address. And then, of course, as you said, the issue of abandoning the primary domicile as the point you made. So with all of that, and with the greatest of respect, but I feel like I need to uphold the challenge.
By a vote of 4-0 then of this panel, the challenge is upheld. And a formal record of procedures and findings will be filed with the state board within 20 days of this hearing. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming and holding out, and this is the best way our country works, in my opinion. Thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Vote to adjourn. Second.
Vote aye? Okay. Stand adjourned.
Okay, before you go away, please,
Okay, y'all
Leave me.
listen to Cheryl. Cheryl, go ahead.
if somebody's sending, okay, thank you. If somebody's sending me an email with some information in it, has that happened?
That would be the director.
You were going to put your email address up on the screen and I didn't get that.
It's in the chat box at the bottom, I think.
It's in the chat. Do you see
I
it?
don't have
I
access.
can't get it to come up.
We don't click.
It's not coming up.
There you
Okay, let me,
Yes,
There you go.
okay, let me just
We
spell
got
it
it.
for you.
we got it.
You got it.
Yeah.